Welcome to Breaking the Silence of Design, a bi-monthly podcast designed to discuss the issues of diversity, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the built environment. My name is Karen Compton, and I am your co-host and principal of A3K Consulting.
And I'm Gabrielle Bullock, Principal and Director of Global Diversity for Perkins and your co-host on this journey. And today we are taking questions, and not just any questions, we are taking student questions. Last year, in the fall, I guess, we did a roundtable with IIDA students, and questions were submitted, and we answered what we could. So we are taking the time today to answer the remaining questions.
So this is all our perspective. These are our thoughts, our ideas, some things for you to think about and share within your own communities as we kind of go through this. We're not experts on this. We just want to be able to start a conversation. So here we go. The first question. What are your thoughts on decolonizing design programs in the U.S.?
I think that architecture programs, academia, the curriculum has typically been very narrowly focused on European, American, and not so much on the diverse cultures and communities and environments that have always existed. So I think in order to broaden who designs and who designs for who, that we should broaden the curriculum to include, to be more inclusive of the kinds of communities that we're designing for, and to share that in the curriculum for designs. And you know, something, when I read this, the first thing that came to mind was, well, absolutely we should, because if I can see me, if I can see me, then I can be there.
Yeah.
If you see you, you can do it. So I think representation, both in curriculum and who teaches, is absolutely important in attracting more diverse students.
So the student asked specifically about design programs, but my take on it is I think we should be looking at decolonization in education as a whole. Unfortunately, in the early to late 1800s, America adopted this cultural assimilation idea where we removed other people's language and culture and food and history from just regular curriculum in grades kindergarten, what was now is considered to be kindergarten, but kindergarten through grade 12. And so that is what we're trying to put back into high school, middle school, elementary school education, so that it's not just about design schools having to go through this and look at this. It's really about education as a whole, looking at pedagogy and instruction and everything else on the whole. So I absolutely agree.
Here's one. So this student asked, is there an equity scorecard for design and architecture firms? Yeah. Something that I could consult to determine if a firm is a safe place for me to work as a transgendered BIPOC designer.
That's a big question.
The second part of that is, as someone that will be graduating in the next couple of years, how would you recommend finding a firm where you feel safe and respected in the workplace? So I would say on the scorecard, I don't know of too many. I do know that the JUST label exists. I don't know.
And that's not an endorsement. That's just
it's not an endorsement.
An observation.
It is an equity scorecard, if you will. We do not use it at Perkins. We've developed our own criteria, but I would say, scorecard aside, this is about being human, being comfortable, and being welcomed in any organization or community of that. So I would say, one, look at the website and the materials of a firm or organization. What does it represent to you? Do you see you? Can you envision yourself there, and can you decipher from the materials on the website that they're public what their philosophy is, if they have a philosophy. And then, you know, if you get to the interview, you interview them as much as they interview you to get to the core. What's their core value?
Yeah. Yeah. I would definitely say, just to kind of chime on to that, I would definitely try and look at the leadership composition. Most organizations, most firms may not put the names of the individuals, but they usually do a really good job of kind of posting representative leadership within their own organization. I would definitely say take a look at that. I would also utilize the interview process as, and I know this is really difficult for students, but the takeaway for me is I would want a student to understand that the interview is a two-way process. It's a two-way dialogue. It's not just the organization seeing if you're a right fit for them, but it's you seeing if they're a right fit for you. So I would take a chance on exploring what fit actually looks like. Explore what is your philosophy around the LGBTQ community as a whole. Explore what their feelings are about Black, Indigenous people of color. What do they feel? How do they approach it from a design perspective? Because I do think the only time you really get a chance to kind of date and have that courtship, really, right, is in the interview process. It's not really once you get into the firm.
Right, right. And I do think that firms expect more pointed questions.
Yeah.
In interviews these days, and so I would encourage you to be as honest and authentic with your questions and curiosity about the firm.
Now you made a good point. You said, you know, go online and look. Social media, whether we like it or not, good, bad, or indifferent, right, provides a lens that 10 years ago, 15 years ago didn't have. So use social media to investigate, understand the firms that you're potentially applying to. I did want to respond to the scorecard though, because I was studying different kinds of mechanisms by way of trying to get to more inclusive practice. And my approach to this is really about looking at other industries, not always looking to architecture to have the answer. So General Mills, the cereal corporation, actually has an inclusionary scorecard. And it's a place to kind of start, because what they do is they assign inclusionary behaviors like listening and building teams and acknowledgement into what they consider to be their scorecard, so that they're trying to drive behavior within the organization to get people to be more inclusive, as opposed to making it a metric and a check the box.
Is the scorecard made public?
Yeah, yeah.
And so if it's not, well, how did
and it's not shame-based, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
I like
Well,
that. I started looking there. So I think part of what you and I talked about for this season is really kind of starting to point people in the direction of saying, here's some things to think about. That was certainly a place that I started and went, okay, this is really interesting.
And I just, you know, and then we're going to move on to the next question, but I really want to encourage folks to look at, you know, a scorecard is one thing.
Yeah.
How you did last year, oh, we didn't do so well last year.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? You know, there's both qualitative and quantitative, and it's about behavior.
Yeah.
It starts with behavior and it starts with a commitment. And then the scorecard or strategies or EDIs, strategic plans, can follow. But I think unless you're committed, it will just be a scorecard.
A scorecard. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
Okay.
Okay, so how are project teams selected, and how do you ensure equity and balance on the team? Should a project team reflect the demographics of the client or the aspirational goals of the client?
Well, there's many ways to put a team together, many criteria, right? Expertise, role, locale, language, culture. So I think from where I think this is coming from an inclusive and equitable place, I would say that try to be as diverse as you can on your team. To get as many perspectives as possible. if you have that opportunity. I think that, you know, for example, we're doing a project for a confidential client, and it's around healthy foods and a whole new model in the Black community. Well, I knew that there was a staff member that was very interested in healthy foods, sort of lived in the neighborhood, and I said, you know what, he'd be great for this job. So I think asking what people want to work on, what drives them, what they're interested in, and if the opportunity comes up, then remember it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think our lived experiences goes a long way to fill out a team in the right ways, in an appropriate way, so that it's not just skills-based. You know, we have to get to the point where we have a cultural nuanced and competency.
So I love the idea of having a cultural competency. So in a recent film that was released that created a world around a Black character, the producer of the film put together this thing called a culture trust. And it's very similar to what we do in design in terms of soliciting community and stakeholder engagement. But what was really unique about it was the culture trust continued to exist after the design charrette, after the community engagement piece. And this culture trust was a representation of people of color who could speak to what it was like to live in a community of color. And they weren't all necessarily employees, so that the burden isn't necessarily placed on just Black people or just Latinx individuals to talk about their community and how it functions. But it sought other allies, other partners, other people who wanted to help create an authentic experience. And I love that idea as being something that we could look at within design to bring in, again, not looking for architecture to have all the answers, but looking at other industries as a point.
And I like that, but I want to clarify because I'm afraid some of it might be misinterpreted as if you can't represent the community, then you bring in a consultant. It's not that simple, right?
No.
I think, but there's room to bring in others to fill out the team to be the most authentic. So I think I like that. I like that culture trust, and I think, you know, representation, as I said, it does matter. And some clients, it's very important to them to have that that cultural connection.
Yeah. What was really cool about this culture trust was that there were no consultants. The other people who were invited to participate were other aspects of the design profession who just also happened to be people of color.
Right.
And so they weren't acting in the role of a consultant, because I totally agree with you about that. They were just bringing the authenticity of what it's really like.
That's where I think we should leave this question. You must be authentic.
You must be authentic.
The authenticity.
Yeah, totally agreed. Okay, so we have one more, I believe, and that is, as a student, what is the best way for me to talk about my activism? How do I handle it in an interview session? I know that Black Lives Matter is controversial for some, but I believe in it and I believe in its goals. When I'm asked in an interview about my extracurricular activities and organizations, how do I talk about Black Lives Matter?
I think you should go first on this one.
Okay, so let's talk about what happens if you don't talk about it. So, in I think our first season, we talked about this whole aspect of covering, how we make a choice to not bring our whole selves to work. But in doing that, it creates an unfair burden on us because we are not authentic. We're not able to be our whole selves. And that's self-preservation, right? And I think we all understand that. But let's talk about what happens if you do bring it up. And if you do bring it up, you're able to actually find out whether or not this is a good place for you to be in terms of organizational fit. It's an opportunity to kind of explore commonality and common value. So I would probably frame it like this. I would call the elephant what it is, which is, I understand that Black Lives Matter is controversial for some, but it's incredibly important to me. and I'm very passionate about it, and these are my reasons why. And then I would have the discussion. And if the conversation falls flat, honestly, you'll know that that's not a great place for you. But if the conversation then turns into shared passion and shared interest, you know that that's a place where your perspective is welcomed under that tent.
Right. And I would say if you're supporting and believing in Black Lives Matter or any other cause,
Right.
is absolutely important to you to bring to work, then you should absolutely bring it up, because if it's so important to you, to your everyday, that if you hide that, then I would bet that you're not going to feel so satisfied every day, because you're going to feel like you left part of yourself at home. But if you think you can do it without sharing, then do that too. I mean, I really do think it's a personal decision and a personal conviction.
Yeah.
What are you going to do if they're not in support of?
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's a really good question. But if you're doing it in an interview, again, find
Yeah.
out whether or
Yes.
not it's a fit, because
And there's ways to do it without playing all your cards too.
Yeah, and without offending, without truly
Right.
offending, because the intent here is never to offend. It's to just really explore.
Right. Well, and I don't think any of us should feel like we're going to be offending someone if we talk about something we believe
Yeah.
in that is legitimate.
Those are our questions,
That's our questions.
and those were not exactly easy, and
Those were not easy.
And we still have a bunch of other ones too. So if we did not get to your question, we will definitely get there. So I do want to thank IBI Group, who is our founding partner on this journey. I want to thank DLR Group for hosting us today. I also want to thank SOM, Co-Architects, and Steinberg Hart for joining us on this journey. We thank you so much for your commitment to diversifying and providing more equity in the profession.
And I want to thank our followers and our subscribers for joining us. And it's not too late to join us. You can subscribe on YouTube and join us on LinkedIn and Twitter. And so we look forward to seeing you on the next discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.